Hi folks, welcome back to the Hoard. So let me show you what I'm up to. I've been asked to do a video on my Mitsubshi Mr Slim heat pump. It's a ductless heat pump. So I guess I just wanted to show you the temperature. It's actually, I just opened that. So this is the outside unit. You can see it's there, and then the pipes run there. And behind this gutter is where the pipes go up and into the house. So I put a slit in the gutter. You guys could kind of see the pipes behind it. And then in the house, excuse the mess, that's all there is. I don't know, it's about 1 foot that way and about 3 foot that way. I installed this myself. So I have it set to 71 degrees, and you can see it's not in the direct, and this thing says 69. I think it's showing you 69. And then on the far end of the room, right, it's 70, 71, and you guys could kind of see the temperature. It's about 75 outside. This is a big room. This room is like 24 by 24. Then the house actually extends over a little further over there. So the house is 30 foot wide. And then if you go down the hallway, there's the bath. This is the far end of the house. And you can see, I don't know, what's that, about 72, give or take a little bit. So it does a really good job. It's 24,000 BTUs. I installed it at the end of October last year, so this is about a 10-month review, let's call it. I used it all through the winter. I only used 30 gallons of oil to heat this place, and then I used about 2 tons of pellets. The thing is great if it's like 10 degrees and above. It produces heat. If it goes down below 10 degrees, I tend to turn it off and use the oil furnace. And the oil furnace with the pellet stove on the cold days uses about 5 gallons of oil. And you can see there were only really 6 cold days cold enough to use the oil furnace, because I used 30 gallons of oil. Maybe the oil furnace was on about 10 days. So, you know, a couple of the days it used 5 gallons, a couple of the days it only used a couple of gallons. It's really good, and I'll show you the meter setup I have for it downstairs. And there's the tag on the bottom of it. I don't know if that helps you guys at all. Let's see if we can get a little better focus. There you go. So it's good for, I use it for 10 degrees and above. I could tell when it's actually too cold and I'm using it, because I'll hear the compressor outside like cycling frequently, like, and the fan, the fan on it whirls really at a high rate, and you could actually hear it. But that's the only sound it makes. It's virtually silent. Downstairs and you're really going to have to excuse the mess downstairs. When I installed it to its own box, its own power box, a separate box, and extend it off to the side, so to speak. And I ordered a, I know I'm a crazy hoarder, and I ordered a power meter, an LCD power meter, and I hooked it up to that. It uses 220, and the nice thing about the power meter, and let me get some lights on here. Is right here. I think you guys could see that. Here you go. Like right now it's got 243 volts going to it. It's using 2.21 amps for a 450 watts of power. And so far for the lifetime of this thing, it used 3,386 kilowatts. So this thing, I pay about 17 cents a kilowatt just to make the math go easy. Let's call it somewhere around 20, which, I don't know. This thing has used about $600 worth of power, right, in its lifetime, give or take six and a quarter worth of power. I used to have window air conditioners, 120 volt models, and when I checked the wattage that they would use, I had an 8,000 watt one that I would run on low in the living room, and it would use, sorry for the blurry and so forth, and it would use about just under 800 watts to not effectively cool the whole downstairs. So this thing uses, and I used to run it on low, because if I'd run it on high, it went up to about 1,000 watts, and once again, it didn't make much difference. It really didn't cool the place much more than it did running on low or medium. But it would go up over 1,000 watts of power consumption, and supposedly it had an EER of 9. This thing has an SEER for air conditioning of almost 20. I think it's 19 and change. And for, or is it 19 and change for heating and 20 for air conditioning? Anyway, I can cool this entire downstairs area to 70 degrees or colder, no problem. It cost me less than 500 watts to do that, which is somewhere around, call it 9 cents an hour. So it's costing me 9 times 24. Let's make it 9 times. It's cost me about $1.75 to air condition this place. During the winter, if I'm trying to heat this place, depending on what temperature it is outside, if it's somewhere around 30, it uses about 1,000 watts. So, which means it's costing me about twice as much. So it's costing me about $3.50 a day to heat this place at about 30. If I was burning oil, I'd probably be burning over 2 gallons of oil to do the same thing. And what are we paying for oil nowadays? It's cheap at $1.86, but typically it's not that cheap. Typically it's over $2 a gallon, particularly during the winter. Even last winter, with oil being cheap and all, I think it was, still two and change, depending when in the season you bought it. If you bought it right at the beginning of the season or from a discount guy or something, you might get it for $1.99. But as the season wore on and it got cold out, you were paying about $269. So depending on the temperature, it does a good job. The bad thing, though, once again, as you start going to 10 degrees or below, you can hear that thing really churning away, trying to make enough heat. So if wherever you live is, it doesn't go below 10 degrees much, I say it's the greatest thing in the world. For us, we get a week or two of below 10 degrees. And even on those days, typically during the day, it'll go up to 20s. The normal high-low split for me, cold, is somewhere around 15 and 32. That's my normal cold high-low split. We have seen 20, 30 below zero in my area, though that's kind of a rare event, a very rare event. Typically, we don't get below zero much. If we do, it's 5 or 10 below. Typically, winter days, it normally gets pretty close to freezing. Even once again on the coldest days, there could be a week where it stays below 20, but that's more of a rare event than a. So I figured it was a good investment. The everything to install it, and the compressor outside and all, and the plumbing, the pipe kit to put the two of them together, and it came with the remote control. It came full of Freon. All you had to do was pump all the moisture out and open the valves. The parts to put it together were like just under $2,400, and then I bought the manifold you put on it for $410. I bought sealant. I bought a pump. I bought nitrogen for backfilling it. So when I evacuated, I backfilled with nitrogen. Then I evacuated the nitrogen out and backfilled with more nitrogen. Then I evacuated it all out before I opened the valves. Because the drier you get the system, the more moisture you get out of it, the better it behaves. You get less corrosion. Everything lasts longer. So I went through the trouble of backfilling with nitrogen a couple of times and pumping it out. So the tank, the regulator, all that junk cost me a little over $500. So I have about $3,500 in the entire system, and including the tools. No, that doesn't work. It was about $2,400 and another $500. I have about $3,000, just over $3,000 into the entire system and all the tools to install it. So if I ever want to install another one, I can. Call it $3,100 with the wiring and the separate box and everything. So the breakers, $3,200. So it was really worthwhile to me. I was getting quotes over $5,000 to install, and that didn't include the electrical work. So you know, by the time they got done with me, it probably would have been $5,500. So I saved over $2,000 installing it myself. Not a hard job. I mean, there's a plate you hang on the wall behind this. You just got to make sure you set up the plate so that you're not hitting a stud when you try to put the pipe going out the back. So, you know, just use the stub finder to make sure I had studs to hook the plate to, and then you just bend the lines, make sure you don't kink, put the lines out back, hook your lines to those lines for the extended thing, you know, work your way down, and then you make sure you kind of go with it downhill. So went downhill and down by the compressor, we did a spin, and then into the back of the compressor. You hook it all up, then you hook your manifold, set up to it, you know, the thing with the gauges. Pumped it out with my vacuum pump. There was a place on the manifold for backfilling with nitrogen, so I hooked my tank to it and turned the pump off, backfilled with nitrogen, you know, pumped it out again, backfilled with nitrogen, pumped it out again. When I backfilled it with nitrogen and pumped out even quicker, which kind of makes sense, right? You're not trying to boil off moisture or anything else with the vacuum. and was really a piece of cake. I guess I backfilled it 3 times and pumped it out 4 times, right? The initial pump plus the 3 more with nitrogen. Then there's a couple of valves you open up, and I did a leak back test overnight. No, after I pumped it out 3 times, I pressure tested it and let it sit overnight to make sure that it didn't, drift downward. It passed its pressure test. I pumped it out the last time. I opened the valves, let the Freon in, let it sit for a few hours just so that the Freon sought its own level and kind of worked its way through. Then I turned it on, and it's been more or less running ever since. Probably in the last 8 months, 8+ months, this thing has been only turned off maybe 5 days, 10 days most. It's really run almost that entire time, and it's been good. You can see how much power it's used. Less, or somewhere around $600 worth of juice for the last 8 months, which, by the way, goes from the end of October all the way through now. The day we were installing it, there was snow blowing. It was the end of October, but we got our first snow flurry. So as we were hooking it up, my buddy commented, "Boy, about time you installed this. It's starting to snow." So, I remember the snow flurries. Anyway, if you have any questions about it, please ask. So I gave you the price. I gave you its power consumption. That extra meter was only like $20 plus the box to install. They cut a little piece of plexiglass and, pop the meter into it and, put it all in and set it all up nicely. So that really about covers it. Once again, any questions, please ask. I'm very happy with it. I highly recommend it. I say go for it. Thanks for watching and commenting and subscribing. Thanks for asking questions. If there are any other questions about the Hoard, please ask. And folks, please remember to get out there and enjoy all your days. Keep your feet down, keep your head up, and have fun. Bye now, folks.